Hey there, horror movie tea sippers.
The following podcast will contain spoilers for the movie we are about to review. If you have not seen the movie and do not wish to have anything ruined prematurely, then please do not continue to listen until after you have seen the movie.
And welcome to the Horror Movie Tea Podcast. Today we are finally done with listener requests for now. So we picked a movie that we wanted to watch called Before Someone Gets Hurt. And if someone wants to watch this movie before they listen to the rest of this episode, it is free on Amazon Prime right now. So just a heads up.
Yes.
But before we go to the movie, as always, let's start off with tea. Jess, you'll have to, yes.
Okay. So we are drinking the last sample that we got from Plum Deluxe.
Second to last.
Oh, right. I forgot we got the extra one that we're going to have to share a cup on. So this one is Tea Break White Tea. We got one of like each of the different kinds of tea just so we could have a variety and sample each kind. But this one has white tea, orange peel, tangerine essence, honeydew melon essence, and it is all organic.
And I really like just smelling the tea. It smells like a white tea tends to always smell very light, but with the added scents, it's like a sweet, light, warm treat, and I can't wait to try it.
It is listed as low caffeine, so it does still have some, but white tea generally does have less caffeine than green tea or black tea. Black tea typically has the most.
Yeah, black tea has about the same equivalent as like a cup of coffee. Green tea has a little bit less. I think it's like 20 or 30 milligrams less. And then white tea is the least amount, but still a little bit of caffeine.
Yeah. So you're not completely depriving yourself of it, but you don't get the full oomph of get up and go.
Yeah. But before someone gets hurt. So this movie is kind of your run-of-the-mill paranormal activity movie where these paranormal investigators are trying to make it big. They're already getting big on the internet, and they might be picked up by a TV channel. You probably have never heard of it. It's the Sci-Fi Channel. And
definitely never heard of it.
And so obviously they were super excited, and so they're like, we need to make this like a good one. And so they all go to the house and they hook up their equipment, and they quickly find out that the murders involving because I was a span of how many years and 14 kills? I forgot. It was within a short amount of time.
No, it was a long amount of time. It was over a vast amount of time.
Like 200 years or something?
Something like that, yeah.
But still, like 14 kills in that one location. It's pretty significant. But anyways, and they find out that it's involved in this cult that is essentially trying to allow Lucifer to go back up to heaven so he can be a good angel again. And yeah. So for entertainment, you might want to go first, Jess, because I'm sure as normal that I'll have a lot more to say than you.
Yeah, so I had seen this movie before a couple of times actually, and what's odd about this movie is when you're not really paying that close attention to it, it's all right. I mean, it's a low budget film, so you don't expect too much out of it, but it's not that bad. again, I've seen it a couple of times and it was decent. Now, when we watch movies for episodes specifically, we pay extra close attention to the details and things.
Yeah.
And what was once a pretty decent movie, I would have originally rated it at like a 7 because I had watched it multiple times and I don't mind watching it again. Um, the inconsistencies that we had noticed, especially with the storyline, it makes it go back down. So I would rate it a 6. We've still seen worse, but there's too many inconsistencies for me to be able to rate it higher. I know Alyssa's got a lot of stylistic things that really, really bugged her a lot, and I know she's gonna go on a rant about it, but they didn't really bother me. I kind of expected them, so it wasn't too big of a drawback for me. But the main issues I have, we'll get into the realism scale because there are too many story plot holes and inconsistencies for it to really make sense in the story. So that otherwise it's just kind of your run of the mill paranormal investigative type movie. I do like that they don't rely completely on just the found footage. They do have some scenes that are shot as like a regular movie. You can tell it's kind of low budget. It's not very high quality, very unstable, even on the scenes that aren't them holding the camera. So it's not the best for sure, but it's not horrible. It's not motion sickness horrible. So, that's what I have. Again, most of what I have is, again, realism. It's always realism with me.
Yeah, it is. And
Oh.
for me, it's always entertainment because I'm the
It is. It
cinematographer, like
is.
type of
We've each got
fanatic.
our niches, so
Yeah. But that's why we
you're
work so well
nitpicky on the
together.
exactly. You're nitpicky on the entertainment portions, and I'm nitpicky on this isn't right.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is not how it do. So, I will pass it over to Anissa now.
Yay. I have the microphone now.
Get ready, everyone.
So, so this one, it I don't regret seeing this movie, but it also there was quite a bit that frustrated me and annoyed me. And I really don't think a low budget is a good excuse because there have been a ton of super low budget movies that have done really well. Like, for example, Paranormal Activity. It was an indie film that was super cheap to make, and that's why they, aside from Blair Witch, we're going to put that aside, but it was really Paranormal Activity that launched all of these found footage movies. So it's like low budget, terrible excuse. But anyways, so I would rate this a 5.5. And I will say the one positive thing I will say is typically for a lot of found footage movies, do you want to? The tea is good, isn't it?
Tea's amazing. The honeydew is actually fairly it's a lot more strong than I would have guessed, but it's so good. It's, like, naturally sweet because of it, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
so
very
light
nice.
and refreshing. It's so good.
I already made it a little bit more strong than they suggested, but I kind of wish I made it a little bit stronger. But yeah, it's pretty tasty.
This is good. This
But
is like a really good early morning tea.
yeah, well, I'm a crazy person that drinks caffeine and I'm like, oh, it's a good wind down tea. But that caffeine.
This would be good at, like, twilight on the porch,
Hmm.
this in spring or summer.
Yeah.
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 I'm sorry, continue. I thought you
Yeah,
were
it's
gonna put
like
that
I,
little
I was
plug in
looking
there.
at your face. I'm like, she wants to say something. I better just let her say it before she explodes.
Good. This is tasty. Plum or plumdeluxe.com. white tea break is good.
Or break
Tea
time,
break.
white tea. Or
Yeah.
tea break. Sorry, tea break,
I'm gonna get it.
white tea.
We're just slaughtering the name, I'm sure. Tea break white tea.
Aha, I did it. But yes, it is very tasty if you guys like white tea.
It is really
And it's
good.
hard to make like a lot of varied flavors for white tea without it overpowering the white tea. This I feel like really complements the
Mhm.
lightness of it really well.
It really does. Yes.
But anyways, so back to entertainment. I will say the one thing that I think this movie did a really good job on is I have a lot of trouble most of the time with a lot of these, not found footage, but these indie films on like the characters aren't very varied, they're very forgettable. I have trouble telling them apart. But with this movie, they actually had each of the characters had varied enough personality. They had rememberable traits. So it was a lot easier. Like, I'm terrible with names. And I actually was finding that I was able to recall a few of their names fairly easily. And that doesn't come easy for me. So that they definitely are pretty good with like character development and creating a varied amount of characters. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say that they were good characters, but hey, I mean, being able to tell them apart is extremely important, and I would rather be able to tell the characters apart and them being, okay, rather than like all of the characters being the same and them being good characters, because then I don't know, it's just kind of ironic. But anyways, so the one thing, and just mentioned this a little bit, is the camera work. I question whether or not they went to a school for cinematography, because there were a lot of quick cuts. It's like they'll have casual conversation, and normally the pace of cutting the film, like cutting to different angles, is supposed to keep in pace with the conversation. So if it's a very relaxed conversation, have like far off shot, once in a while up close shot, but make it very like slow to switch back and forth, but not so much that it's boring. But these, like in the beginning is where I noticed it the most. It's like they were talking about, being excited on potentially being picked up on TV. And they're just having a conversation that was pretty relaxed, nothing tension building about it. And it's just like cut, 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 cut. It was so distracting for me. And then plus, whenever they set up the cameras in the actual house and they're showing that there's like a disruption in the footage, it was just so bad and frequent. It's like even for a crappy camera, it would not be that often. Or whenever Billy was taking his tour around the house, instead of them just doing a quick cut to the next room, because they didn't want to, they don't want to have the movie take forever by showing him walking to each room, which is completely understandable. But they decided to add a static effect in between each thing. And it's just so distracting, completely unnecessary. Honestly, it took me out of the movie. Like, I agree that they should have these like static effects or disruption in the film. Yes, that's necessary for the type of film that they're doing. But the frequency of it was so distracting and so off-putting, and it took out the realism for me, and just it was so frustrating. And then also,
Was gonna explode during those scenes, guys.
just it's like not only are they adding way more editing for themselves than they need to, but they're also making a worse film. So it's like they're taking longer effort or more effort to edit the film to make it a crappier film, in my opinion. And then also there were a lot of false scares and jump scares. Like there were two, pranks in the movie, or three pranks in the movie where you think that something's legitimately happened. Well, at least the last two pranks, you think something is legitimately happened. And they're like, oh, just kidding. And so in a way, it did kind of work with the story on like whenever the first person dies, he's like, okay, that's funny. But at the same time, it made whenever the scares did happen be like, okay, here's the actual scares. Like it didn't really prime me to be excited about the scares. And also they really needed to work on when they place the music and how loud they make the music. Cause it's like they go into a room because they say that there's activity going on. He goes into the room. There's no activity. Well, then he goes to open the closet. There is nothing in the closet, but the music's still like, bah! Like just so unnecessary. It's just like the It movie where they're like, let's make the music, you know, try and create the mood for the audience. But then they were putting it at times that it didn't even need the music. And then the time it just, the music can help, but you really need to watch where you place it, and you need to be very selective, because otherwise it just is a nuisance.
I am a big believer that the music, and especially the lack thereof, can really set the tone, especially in a horror movie,
Yeah.
for different scenes and creating the atmosphere and the scare factor. It can really help or it can really hinder the film. So I
Yeah.
do agree with that for sure. What they could have done instead on some of those things, like the closet scene, is just have some underlying soft music leading up to him opening the door.
Yeah. And
And
then
then
just
when he opens it,
silence.
just stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like slow, soft, building tension music. It doesn't have to go like
Yeah, it
like what
doesn't
they were
need the
doing.
we
And
don't
then
need the mezzo forte, like, it doesn't
yeah,
have to be fortissimo at all. Like, we
just
don't need the giant sound because we wear headphones. We don't need but even in the theater, like, your audience doesn't need that. That's not what we come there for.
yeah, just it's like have those moments, but make them very selective and only in very particular moments. Like if it's going to actually add to the scene rather than it's like for me, honestly, it feels like they watched a bunch of movies and they're like, we think this is what makes a scary movie. Because honestly, with the tone, I thought they were trying to make a serious film, but then there's scenes that are so funny. Like the ball scene in the beginning with Billy, like that scene was so hilarious. But then there's other funny scenes too where it's like I think they're trying to make it scary, but it's just so it's like I can't even form words to explain why it comes off as funny versus scary. But it's just with
I
the
think a lot of it's the acting, it's just bad acting.
I mean, I I honestly didn't have a huge complaint with the acting itself. I felt like the choppiness and then the random music, it almost makes it come off as a student film or an amateur film. So you almost expect it to come off as like a very cheesy film, but then at the same time they're trying to make it serious. I just confused by the movie. And then not only but I think the filmmakers were honestly confused by their own movie because like the brothers, they couldn't tell like who was older than the other.
Well, that's more part of the realism.
Well, but the storyline I feel like is more entertainment because it's like, you know, you need a structured story and they just couldn't tell. But anyways, we will complain even more in the realism. So, would you like me to start first in the realism since okay. So for the realism, I would give it a 3. Just because it's not like, I don't know, it's just like bits and pieces came off as extremely unrealistic, and that's really what did it for me. In the beginning of the movie, whenever they're investigating the first couple's house and they're explaining why the noise was being made, I actually kind of like that idea, and that they're honestly trying to debunk any paranormal activity. So it's like at first I'm like, okay, I'm kind of on board with this. But then just like, I forgot what her name is. What if it's Alice? I don't remember. But it is the second girl that died. She gets pushed back in her chair, and then she's hanging from the door frame. But she's immediately, okay, thank you. She's immediately dead. I'm sorry, paranormal or not, it's like they didn't show any like head trauma or anything that would indicate that she would just immediately die like that. It's just so off-putting to me. I was just like, what? Like, because honestly, whenever they went up to her, I thought she was going to be like slowly suffering and dying, which it's kind of morbid now that I'm talking about it, but it makes more sense than her instantly being dead. It's like all you see as far as injuries go is the stakes in her wrists or hands. But that's it. Like, I'm not seeing any head trauma that would mean like immediate knockout or anything like that. And then, of course, the girlfriend at the end slipping and then hitting her head on the stupid light outside. Just like, there's so many odd choices that they made, like either extremely coincidental or they just seemed too sudden and just, yeah. Oh, and then, okay, one more thing before it goes to you. Another one that was just like, that really took away the realism is after 2 people died, Tim and his girlfriend were like, let's have some sex. And it's just like, really, like, you are trapped in the house, 2 of your friends are dead, and you want to have sex. Just, anyways. But that's my high horse. Sorry. I'm sorry. You can go ahead.
So I give it a 2 for realism, and I did like in the beginning how they were trying to debunk everything, but there wasn't really any of that in the next house, like, at all. I
Yeah.
mean, the brother Billy, when he first sees the ball roll towards him, he does think that there's someone there, and he does set a really, really adolescent trap of chips all over the floor, which you could easily step around, as they showed in a few different scenes.
Yes. And plus, like, so much of the time chips are already broken in the bag. So it's like, yeah. Anyways.
So unless you take a picture and compare, you're not necessarily going to know if it was disturbed.
Yeah.
So that didn't really help. Also, they did mention, and you mentioned this before in entertainment, the movie can't seem to decide who is the eldest brother. They make it a point in the movie with the cult, especially, that they kill firstborn sons of priests or pastors or men of the cloth, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very beginning of the movie, they try to establish that Tim is the older brother. When Billy says, I thought older brothers were supposed to be supportive, I guess you didn't get that memo. Later in the movie, when they have their kind of heart to heart toward the end, and Billy's like, I just wish you had my back more in this life. Tim then says, I'm your little brother. I've never let anything happen to you, right? Pick one.
Well, and plus having Tim is so much taller than Billy, it just makes sense that he would be the older brother.
Well, and he always comes across, even with his other pranks and things, he still comes across as more mature and more
Yeah.
put together. Whereas a lot of Billy's habits, like smoking and laziness and not getting to work on time and, asking how early is early to set up everything and not really generally caring about anything makes
Breaking
him
and
come across
entering.
as, yes, makes him come across as younger. He doesn't really take anything seriously, including his job, he doesn't seem like the oldest at all. So for them to say that, it doesn't make sense there, especially when they tried to establish earlier in the movie that he was the youngest. They also mentioned again in the cult, they kill the firstborn sons. So why did they leave Tim alive and let him leave and take Billy instead?
Yeah, I
I mean,
think
I
they
know he
just
was saying, take me, but it doesn't really make sense.
yeah, I feel like they ended up just accidentally switching who was the older brother and ended up making it
Yeah,
Billy.
I
But yeah.
guess maybe, but they also didn't establish that any of them were sired by someone of the cloth.
Yeah.
Like, Allison was the first one to be killed and had the markings on her wrists, which implies she was the firstborn of someone in that religion, a priest or minister or pastor or someone
Yeah.
in religion. And they never mentioned that. They barely even talked to Allison.
Yeah.
Allison had like 5 lines in the movie, maybe. So they didn't really establish anything for her. And if the main characters are also supposed to be from that life, they never mention it either. So it doesn't add up really. It doesn't make sense. I get that the others were killed more out of opportunity. They didn't have the markings on their arms like Allison did, but it just seemed a little out of place.
Yeah.
So it just didn't really add up there. They also in the movie tried to imply that the child was conceived in the house and that it was kind of part of the ritual, I guess. That's what it seemed like they were trying to imply there. But there's no way that they would know that soon
Yeah.
that she was pregnant. They did make reference to the fact that they were planning on adopting. They didn't really mention that she had an issue until the end of the movie when they were telling her she's pregnant. She's like, "That's impossible. I can't have kids." They didn't really say anything before that, but it just there's no way they could have known. The kid had to have been conceived before they went into the house. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. And stuff like that, it's extremely rare, but it does happen on occasion. So it depends on the underlying reason why she couldn't have a kid as to whether or not it's actually possible. But what they were trying to imply, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
And there's definitely no way they would have known that soon, even with a blood test. So, no.
Yeah.
But the main issues that I have are definitely part of the plot holes in the storyline. They just didn't flesh everything out like they should have. And them trying to get out of the house as well when they were trying to break the windows and things like that, it those windows would have broken. But Alyssa also did mention you can unlock them. They didn't even try to unlock the window.
They did. And they're like, we can't
Oh,
unlock them. There's actually a specific
no.
point.
Okay.
Yeah. But, and then later they're like, oh, it's because it was paranormal activity. That's why we couldn't break the windows. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, a movie that did that better was The Haunting, where they couldn't really open anything, so they tried to break the windows, and there were cracks, but the cracks disappeared. That would have been a better way to do it.
That's cool.
That would have been a much better way to do
Yeah.
it. So there are things that you can do to have it make more sense than them just throwing a chair at the window and it doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, or show like a force field if they didn't want to use a
Yeah.
budget for the cracked glass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are other things that they could have done to make it better, and just I feel like the deaths were really excessive. Like, especially if it's supposed to be the cult, they've established it's this cult. And yes, it's supernatural, but it's still supposed to be firstborns of people that are highly religious and leaders in that religion. So why were they all concerned?
I know. It's like they were all freaking out, like, we're going to die. But that's even after the computer genius, which is super convenient, by the way,
Yes.
confirmed like the number, which was also really convenient, of deaths,
Mhm.
and then like who they're killing. Just
Yeah. So my last point is with the text and everything that they were getting and the permit issue. So they received a text initially about the house, and um, that's how they got the information and started researching it and trying to get the permit and everything to go out there, which was fine. That was fine. But if you don't have the permit ready, as lazy as he was, I'm surprised he even went to the house to set up, because I feel like that was more effort than he's normally willing to put in.
that's fair.
Also, if they had found out if anybody had found out that he was in the house without any kind of paperwork or permit or anything, he could have easily been arrested. That is definitely trespassing.
Yeah.
It wasn't technically breaking and entering, as there was no forced entry. The door was unlocked, but it's at least trespassing.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, they picked up the permit after the fact, but they don't. I'm surprised they even were able to get the permit, because, to my understanding, to be able to obtain a permit like that for a residence, you're supposed to be able to get the permission of the person that owns the house. Like, they have to sign off on it. So, if they can't even get in contact with whoever owns the house and they keep trying to say, "Oh, whoever owns it is actually dead," and they've been dead since, like, 1930s,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah.
And then they say later that there were tenants in the place, so who actually owns it?
Yeah.
Have they been renting it out? It kinda sounds like they had the last time they mentioned it, with tenants leaving and not packing up their stuff and everything, but then whoever's renting it out should sign off on it, and they should
Yeah.
have a name for that. It should be recorded somewhere. So, it just there's way too many holes in their story, and they keep changing it, so nothing adds up, so nothing is realistic.
Yeah. It's like, and I don't understand horror movies like this that make those types of mistakes because it's all extremely easy to just do a quick Google search. Like it took us like 5 minutes to confirm that information. Just it's
Yeah.
not that.
I feel like while they were filming it, they went through rewrites on certain scenes
mm,
to make it sound more interesting, and they just never bothered to have it line up and be congruent, and
yeah, and if you look on the credits, it's very few people that directed and produced and wrote. I mean, it's like 5 people. Um, So it's a very small team, but at the same time, I don't know. It's like I've never compared this, but I would imagine if it's a small group of people writing compared to like a large group, I would think it'd be easier to confer and make sure that the writing is all like congruent and makes sense.
yeah.
but I could
It's
be
almost like
wrong.
I don't know if, again, they went through rewrites and just didn't bother to pay attention to make sure that everything lined up or made sense, or if different people wrote the scenes and they only like half scanned through the other scenes,
Hmm.
or what. It didn't really make sense when you pay attention to it. So to sum up, I feel like this movie is kind of fun and interesting if you don't really pay attention to it. It's more one to have on kind of in the background or doing something else while you're watching it. But if you're sitting down to really, really watch it, it's not great.
I will
It's
say
not
the one exception though is if you are having a night with friends, maybe you're drinking, snacking, whatever, as long as you're of age. Um, and just like having it on to make fun of it or like make commentary
Yeah.
on it. That I could also see. But yeah, it's like this movie, I could picture myself maybe watching it one more time. It's like I said before, I don't regret watching this movie, but it's kind of a what not to do
Yeah.
movie in a lot of
It
ways.
it raises a lot more questions than anything. They don't establish anything fully, so you don't really quite feel satisfied
Mhm.
when you're, like, paying attention to it watching it.
Yeah.
Again, the last couple of times I had seen it was kind of on while I was doing something else, so I was only, like, half paying attention to it.
Yeah, like their resolution, you're still like, "What?"
Like,
And it doesn't feel like any sort of closure or resolution or anything like that. It just kind of
yeah.
leaves you baffled.
Yeah.
But
So
if
those are our thoughts, guys.
Yeah, but if you guys have seen the movie, let us know your thoughts. Did the choppy camera work annoy you? Or was it more the realism scale? Or did you really like the movie? And if you did, let us know why so we can continue this conversation.
Or like me, did you like it until you started paying attention to it and had all these questions?
Yes.
That'd be really interesting to see. So let us know what you guys thought. If you have any other requests or anything, please let us know. We always love to hear those and love to watch them and review them after someone's requested it. And everybody, please remember that since the next one is in June, officially, we are starting our summer bash.
Yes.
It's a cruel, cruel summer here at Horror Movie Tea.
Yes, I guess we haven't maybe officially decided, but it's like last June was Shark Month, but we might just do water movies in general.
Heck, we might just extend it. It depends on what you guys want. So let us know. Would you prefer more shark horror movies or just summer water movies in general?
Yes, and if you do want like either the summer movies or the shark movies, give us a few examples because it's like we do have shark movies in mind, but a lot of them are super cheese. So if you have like a
Or more
more
action?
Yeah, so if you have like an actual more serious ish shark movie, I just like there's not a lot of them, but I would love to
It's really
hear.
hard to find them.
I think Piranha would be a good movie to cover too, because
That would be funny. That
yeah.
would be fun. So let us know, you guys, what you think, what you want us to do, what you want to see more of from us. And until the next time, stay safe and stay spooky. Bye.